Hello everyone, I am Faith Njeringure. Welcome to our today's lecture, Public Speaking, BJL 1204. In this lesson, we'll be looking at the introduction of public speaking, and we'll be looking at an overview, what is public speaking. We'll also be discussing different methods of delivering speeches, and also look at the speaker's voice. You find that the speaker's voice is an asset when it comes to presentation. And also we'll be looking at the use of body language when it comes to presentation of speeches or public speaking. And also we will end with listening and look at listening skill, for it is a key factor. You as a public speaker, you are addressing the listeners, and if they don't have good listening skills, you find that the art of public speaking can be concluded not to be effective. Now to our introduction. You find that different people have and different scholars have tried to argue out what is public speaking, and it has been found that public speaking is a powerful tool that has been used for several centuries as a way of spreading ideas and information, as a way of influencing masses. And you find that public speaking is a useful tool in different contexts and also in different activities, and you find that even up to date is applied when it comes to making presentation. Different speakers are invited to make presentations. Also in the job interviews, when you find a panel and you're in front of a panel and you're making a presentation or even giving your feedback based on the interview question, is also part of public speaking. Also in a board meeting where you are talking in a meeting and you're told to give your views with regard to the agenda of the meeting. And also in different special occasions, maybe you're invited somewhere in an occasion, whenever there is a launch in an institution, or even you're invited in a church, or even in a different occasion to give your views or to speak on a given issue. You find that public speaking is also used up to date, and it's an art that is very powerful when it comes to influencing masses. Now we'll try to look at public speaking, the art of public speaking, and how it's similar to our daily conversation. You find that in our day-to-day activities, we meet different people, and through these different meeting or encounters with these different people, we end up making conversations or even communicating to them. And therefore, it's good we try to bring the demarcation in terms of the differences, the difference between public speaking and also the daily conversation that we usually hold, and also the similarities between public speaking and also our daily conversation. And you find that there are different similarities that can be seen when it comes to public speaking and also the daily conversation. And number one, it's the organization of thought. You find that in both public speaking and also in our daily conversations or our daily communication, there must be organization of thoughts. You must organize your thoughts on what to say and also how to say it. For example, if you meet with someone across the streets and they ask you for the direction, you have to organize your thoughts, how you'll start by giving the feedback or even giving the answers with regard to the direction that they had asked. Also, the other thing is the message. You find that some information or the message is tailored to the audience or the audiences, and in both you find that there is a message that is communicated to the audiences. Even in our daily conversation or even our daily communication, even with different peoples or even the significant others, you find if you are the source of the information or even them being the source of the information, there is the message that they are trying to pass to you, or there is a message that you're trying to pass to them. Also, there is the feedback, and there is the response. This is the response. You find that in both daily conversations and also the art of public speaking, there is the response. You communicate to someone in the daily or in our normal conversations, and they'll give their response. If you ask someone, how are you, they'll give their feedback that I'm good, or even I'm fine. This is their response. Or they may even end up not responding or even not responding correctly based on how they were able to interpret the information that you relay to them. You find even in public speaking, you are able to get even the responses from the listeners. They can ask questions, and even you can watch at how they are behaving in terms of non-verbal. If you find your audiences are sleeping, others are on their phones, you're able to get some information, and this is in terms of the response or the feedback. You find that in both there is the source of the information. There is always someone who starts the conversations. In the daily conversation, if you're the one starting the conversation, or there is also another party that is starting the conversation. In public speaking, you find that there is a speaker. Also, another similarity is the recipients, the receivers of the information. There is also a receiving end in the art of public speaking, and also in our daily conversation. So there is noise, and when we mention noise, this touches on the distractors or the hindrances of effective communication. There can be hindrances during a session in public speaking, like internal noise or even external noise. You can be having noise from the constructions and next to the venue where you are holding your session. Also, there can be internal noise when it comes to even daily conversations or even public speaking. People have negative attitude towards the speaker, or even they have a distress, or even they are fatigued. These are just some of the examples of internal noise that can act as interference. And noise can apply to both daily conversations and also public speaking. You find that public speaking also fits the model of communication, because there is the source, there is the receiver, there is the message, there is the noise, and also there is the channel. And we have seen that as we were trying to look at the similarities, but also there are differences. You find that public speaking is not similar to, it's different, it's also different with our daily conversation. And number one is you find that public speaking is highly structured. And in terms of structuring, we are talking of how it's organized. You find whenever you're doing public speaking, or you're speaking, you have a session and you're supposed to speak to people on a given topic or a given issue, you will have to organize your speech in terms of introduction, in terms of the body and the conclusion. Also, apart from that, you have even to structure it in terms of the time that these public speaking or this session will be held. Also, the time that you'll take, maybe you're given 1 or even 2 hours session. And also, you find that whenever the public speaking or the session is ongoing, there is some defined rules on how it can be conducted, in terms of audience cannot just interfere or even ask questions anyhowly. They have to wait to a given point so that they can ask their questions, and that's why we are saying it's highly structured. But you find that daily conversations, they are not highly structured. You can even interfere and ask questions anyhowly. Also, the other difference is that public speaking has a defined purpose. Maybe you have a session to warn, maybe you have a session to educate, maybe you have a session to inform. But you find with a daily conversation, the daily conversation that you usually hold, that there is no defined purpose. You just engage in a conversation with a friend or even with a family member or with someone with no defined purpose, and that's a difference number 2. And now to difference number 3, there is public speaking requires more formal language. And this is true. If you're invited for a session like to discuss on how to deal with the fear, or even on how to deal with other issues, you find that you will have to use a formal language, because in terms of the audience, as much as you are to analyze them demographically, or even doing situational analysis, you find that most of the public speakers tend to use formal language based on the audience that you are to address. But in our daily conversation, you can use language anyhowly. You don't even mind the grammatical errors. You don't even mind on the structuring of the sentences. You can even use a slang. But when it comes to public speaking, formal language is used. Those are some of the differences. And now we'll look at the features or the characteristics of public speaking. And you find that these characteristics have been borrowed from the how public speaking is viewed, and in terms of the model of communication. We said it's a process of communication. Yes, there is the speaker, and this is characteristic number 1. You find that there is the speaker when it comes to public speaking, he or she is the source of the information. Also, there is a defined purpose. You are communicating, or you're having a session to inform, to warn, to educate, or even to create awareness. There is a clear and defined purpose. Also, the message, whatever you'll be presenting or whatever you have prepared for the purposes of addressing the listeners, that is the message. Also the medium, and the medium can be either airwaves if you're invited in a session, maybe, and you're to address a crowd of people, or even to address people in a room. There'll be airwaves as the channel. Maybe you're addressing a nation like our president does, and you find that the channel is either TV or even radio. And you find that at this point we cannot fail to mention the new media, especially at this century, and even at this point. You find that even different public speakers have embraced technology. Nowadays they are using even the online platforms such as Zooms, YouTube Live, Facebook Live. They are using even Teams for the purposes of getting information to their audiences. We also have another feature or characteristics, or another characteristic or element, and that is the setting. And with the setting, this is the surrounding or the situation or the environment that is revolving around the presentation that you're making or the speech that you are to share. And you find that this touches on the issues like time. Maybe your presentation is scheduled in the morning, maybe in the evening, or even during afternoon. Also the size of the room. You may be in a big room, a small room. Also the colors that are within the room, and also the occasion during the presentation. Maybe you are to present during a graduation ceremony. Maybe you are to present during the launching of a given product, the occasion at that moment. And you find that time, size of the room, colors, and occasion set the stages for what the listeners expect. I don't expect in an occasion where we are launching a product and then the topic is not even related to the launch of the product. And you find that the presentations or the speeches that are even done during an occasion, they tend to touch on the occasion that is taking place at that moment. Also, they are the listeners, and these are the audiences of public speaking, and also the response, and the response is the feedback. And as I said earlier, feedback can be either via questions, or even you can look at your listeners or the audience and look at their moods and also try to analyze the non-verbals based on how they are behaving, and from that you can gather feedback. Also, there is the interference, and the interference is the noise, and these disrupts the effectiveness of the art of public speaking. And you find that these disruptors or these interferences, as far as public speaking is concerned, it can either be noise, external noise, but also it can be internal noise or even internal interferences, such as stage fright. As a speaker, you're not so confident, you have some apprehension that may hinder the effectiveness of the art of public speaking. Also, the listeners' distractions, they keep on making noise, they are murmuring, or even they are asking questions. And also the cultural barrier, where people from different backgrounds view each other with suspicion, or some stereotypes that block reception of the messages. Also, there are some cultural diversity and also some stereotypes. You find that some community can be viewed in a given way, and therefore these can prevent the effectiveness and also the reception of the message. A very good example, even in Kenya, there is a lot of stereotyping and a lot of cultural diversity, and how you will address maybe Muslims and how you will address Christians. There is a difference, and how you even will dress when addressing the Muslims will differ based on how you can wear on a casual day. And maybe you are not dressed in a way they think is as per their culture. Maybe they may end up not even listening to you. And also other stereotypes in the society, where some people have, some tribes or some group of people have been viewed as to conduct some witchcraft, or others as thieves. And when you're standing in front of people to making a presentation, people are viewing you as a thief, and therefore this can even prevent proper reception of information, and people may even end up having negative attitude on you. These are just interferences or disruptors that disrupt the effectiveness of public speaking. Also, there is consequences, and the consequences touches on the impact, and you find that a successful speech or successful speeches have impact. You find that people must learn. If you had a purpose of educating, people must get informed. If your purpose of conducting or even having a session was to create awareness, also people must be challenged and also change their action and their mind if you are there to warn or even to persuade people to change their behaviors. And that's why we are saying that there is the impact or the consequences. We will proceed to something else, and that is confidence in public speaking. You find that a major concern in any speech class is a stage fright, and a major concern when it comes to delivering of speech, especially in front of public, is the fear of unknown, the stage fright. And you find that there are 6 ways to turn your nervousness into positive nervousness, because stage fright can be overcome. You can overcome it. And number 1 is acquiring speaking practice. And how can one acquire this speaking practice? Is by practicing a lot to speak in front of people, or even to conduct some public speaking sessions. And as the saying says, that practice makes perfect. You can start by addressing a group of 5, you proceed to a group of 10 or even a group of 20, and then you keep on upgrading. You can even prepare your presentation and do it even in front of a mirror for the purposes of acquiring speaking experience. Number 2 is preparedness. You find that you cannot succeed in your presentation without preparation. It requires preparation for you to succeed, and each minute of speaking requires a 1 hour or 2 hours preparation, and therefore it is always recommendable to prepare. And through preparedness, you are able to overcome the stage apprehension or the fear of unknown when making presentation. Now to the other point, our third point on how you can overcome fear is thinking positively. We are the expression of our mind. If you think of yourself negatively, definitely it will happen. And you find who we are today is a function of your mind. If you think of yourself as a great speaker, definitely the end result will be that you will be a great speaker. And if you think of yourself as a failure, definitely you will fail. And therefore, we are a product of our mind. And therefore, in order to overcome this stage fright or this fear, always think of yourself positively. Also, another way of overcoming fear, use the power of visualization. And what I mean with the power of visualization is you use visual aids to enhance your public speaking art, or use visual aids when you're making presentation. And you find that your confidence will increase when you visualize. There are different visual aids that include objects, they are models, there are also photographs, there are PowerPoints, there is also charts and graphs. These are some of the visual aids that can be used for the purposes of enhancing your art of public speaking. For example, if I'm invited to make a speech, an educational speech, to educate people on how they can deal with the transmission of COVID-19 or the disease that is affecting the country and also the world at the moment. I may carry an object like a mask. I may carry an object like a soap. I may carry even sanitizers for the purposes of showing people how to wear their mask, for the purposes of showing people how to wash their hands, osha mikono. I may even have jerry cans with water, or even have a tank that has a tank in which water can run. I can carry a model of like lungs for the purposes of showing people a model of lungs. And also I can carry photographs that shows pictures of the respiratory systems, and even carry other pictures with lungs that are affected by the virus. I may also carry drawings that are showing different pictures or different drawings of the respiratory systems. I may have a graph or even pie charts that shows on the statistics of the people who have contracted the disease and the people that have succumbed to death as a result of the virus. And therefore, these are just some of the visual aids that one can even use when doing a presentation. Also, one can use even videos for the purposes of making presentation. But there is something to note that visual aids, when used, they help the audience to find the message more interesting, and therefore the audience will be focused. They'll focus on the presentation because you find that they'll find it interesting. Also, they'll grasp the message easily because you're trying to coordinate between the visual aids and also the message, and you find that these can supplement and also complement each other. Also, if you want to retain, you want your audience to remember or to retain the information, they may not remember what you said, but they may remember the pictures or the visual aids that you demonstrated to them. And therefore, as a way of making your audience understand and retain this information, also visual aids can be used. And you find that also the visual aids tend to increase persuasiveness by more than 40%. And also another advantage of using visual aids, you find that it's a way of dealing with the stage fright, because people will shift their focus from you as the speaker and they'll start focusing on the visual aids. If I'm using PowerPoint, as I try to compose myself and to regain my confidence, people can be looking at the PowerPoint, and that's why we are saying that it's a way of dealing with the stage apprehension, and the audience or the listeners tend to shift their focus from the speaker, and now they start focusing on the visual aids. Now to another way of dealing with the stage apprehension or The fright is knowing that nervousness is not visible. By the way, nervousness or fear is not a tangible thing. You cannot touch fear. It's an abstract thing. And therefore, knowing that your nervousness is not visible can really help you as you try to build on your confidence. You find that not unless you demonstrate that you are experiencing fear, people will not even end up knowing that you are experiencing that fear. And therefore, it's always good to know that nervousness is not visible, and not unless you show it out, people will never know that you are experiencing fear. Now to another point or another way of dealing with this fear. The sixth way of overcoming stage fright is by not expecting perfection. No one is perfect. And you find that many are the times that we make plans, and many are the times that we prepare for presentations, but we end up even making some mistakes, and no one understands or no one can tell whatever we had prepared. The listeners don't know what you had prepared. They really don't know what you had even planned to say, and therefore whenever you make a mistake, always know that the listeners are not even aware that you had planned not to make that mistake. And also that mistake can be used as a way of enhancing your presentation. Maybe you are supposed to say sponsorship and you say sponsorship. You can even use it in a joke and you move and you continue with the presentation, because you find that no one is perfect and we keep on making mistakes, and through the mistakes we learn, and they can even be used to enhance the presentation. Now we'll proceed to methods of delivering speech. You find that speeches can be delivered using different ways or different methods of presentation, or different speakers tend to use different ways of delivering this speech. And number one is reading verbatim from a manuscript. And this is just reading written information, or reading whatever, reading a presentation from a piece of paper. It can be typed and printed. It can also be handwritten. And I want to just demonstrate an example. I'm assuming I've been invited to do a presentation on how to deal with financial crises, especially at this moment of a pandemic, or at this moment of the crisis that we are experiencing globally. And I'm just doing a demonstration of reading verbatim from a manuscript. And I'll start by defining what is anxiety: deep sense of worry or fear about one's financial situation and ability to fulfill current and anticipated obligations. Manifestation of anxiety: emotional, can be reflected when one is overwhelmed, helpless, fearless, restless. Also another manifestation: thought, struggle to focus, increased forgetfulness, loss of meaning and purpose. Another manifestation: physical issues, fatigue and lethargy, struggle and breathing, shakiness. Thank you for listening to my speech. I was just reading from a manuscript, and I was reading whatever I had prepared or even written. But you find that there are a lot of reasons why someone may opt to read. And number one, you find some speakers or some presenters are too lazy, and therefore they opt to read. Also another reason that may lead to reading from a manuscript or reading direct from the written speech is lack of time for preparation. You really don't have enough time to prepare, and therefore you opt to read. Also, there is memory issues. There are people who have memory issues, and maybe they cannot retain all the information in their mind, and therefore they opt to read. And also another thing is a conviction that the speech is important to risk, that you really don't want to risk, and you really want to give the information as it is. You find that there are advantages. Number one, it can be timed, because you're not even using a lot of time to do the explanation, or even to add some few information based on the guidelines that you have outlined. Also, it allows planning of the precise words. Now you are planning of the words that are precise, and also the words that you can read. But there are some disadvantages. And disadvantage number one, you find that the speaker cannot give the benefit of expression. You are just standing at one point. You cannot even move. You cannot even use your body to communicate. And you cannot even use the nonverbals for the purposes of making the information sink in the listener's mind. Also, the presentation not done with energy. You can imagine, I was just standing reading. There is no energy that was even used. And even the presentation was more of boring, because presentation not done with a lot of energy. And also another thing, inhibits the response of feedback. People are just listening to whatever you are reading. Even following up on whatever you are reading becomes an issue. They cannot even focus on the whole presentation when you are reading, and therefore even asking questions becomes hard. Even you are focused on reading, and whenever you are reading, you cannot even look at the nonverbal cues for the purposes of getting the response. Now to our second way of delivering the speech is reciting from a memorized text. And you find that this requires much skill to make it efficient. And the memorizing of text is just getting the information and retaining it in your mind. And then after that, now you relay the information without even reading or even referring from anywhere. And we were all taught how to recite our national anthem, either in Kiswahili or even in English, and we can all recite our national anthem just because we have memorized it. And you'll find that there are some speakers who can memorize their speeches and even deliver it without even referring from a written text. But you find it's recommendable to use this method of delivery, especially when you are delivering short speeches, like introductory remarks, like also acceptance speeches. Maybe you are giving some congratulatory remarks. You can memorize this because you don't require a lot of information to retain in the mind, because you find that you can even end up forgetting maybe information and you had prepared to present without using or even referring on a written material. Also, there is speaking impromptu, and with the speaking impromptu, you find this is a method of delivering speech where one is just picked in a crowd of people, or even picked amongst those who have attended or who had attended the event or the occasion, and with little or no preparation. You're just called from nowhere to make a presentation or to give a 5 minutes, to do a 5 minutes presentation, and you're expected to speak in front of people. And you find that this is a way of delivery that is open to feedback, and it occurs when you are suddenly prompted to say some few words or respond to a remark at a meeting. And you find that in such a situation, state the point you are answering, then the point you wish to make, followed by supporting evidence, and finally you summarize your point. And whenever you're making an impromptu presentation and using these speaking impromptu methods of delivery, ensure that you're following an order of ensuring that people are able to understand that you are in your first point, secondly, and also finally it is clear. Now you are making conclusion on the remarks that you are giving. Now to the fourth method of delivery is speaking extemporaneously. And you find that extemporaneous speech is prepared and practiced in advance. You have time to prepare, you have time to practice in advance, and whenever you are making your presentation or you're giving your speech or during your session, a speaker use only an outline while the exact words are chosen during the session or the moment of delivery. You have time to prepare in advance, you practice in advance, you have some guidelines with you or some outlines with you that you have highlighted on the main points, and whatever you will say during that time, you choose whenever you are delivering. You have already internalized whatever you're to say, and therefore, guided by the outline, you are just relaying the information guided by the outline. We will proceed now to something else, the speaker's voice. And as I said earlier, it's an area that we cannot fail to mention when it comes to the art of public speaking. The speaker's voice, the speaker's language, and also the use of a body to communicate, and also the whole aspect of listening. And the speaker's voice, it's the greatest asset the speaker has when it comes to making presentations, when it comes to speech delivery. And you find that the speaker's voice play a major role in communication effectiveness. And there are different aspects of a speaker's voice that you'll be looking at, and number one is the volume. The volume matters when it comes to making speeches. And volume is the loudness or the softness of the speaker's voice. You find that you may be in a room that is too big and it's crowded, and the people who are at the back, they can't hear you, and you're forced to project your voice so that people can hear. And also, apart from that, you can't be in a room making a presentation and then you end up shouting. But you find that in order to enhance the loudness and the softness of our voices as public speakers, we can use technology to enhance by using the public address systems. But again, you find that they should be adjusted based on the size of the room and also the audience who have attended the session. Also, there is the pitch, and the pitch is the highness or the lowness of the speaker's voice, and different speakers are required to use different inflection, because you find that inflection can be used to reveal whether you are asking a question, whether even you are saying it's a statement that you are relaying. Apart from that, whether you are making a joke or whether you are sincere, whether you are happy or even you are sad, people can judge your voice or even analyze your voice for the purposes of being able to know whether you are asking a question or even you are relaying a statement, whether you are sad, whether you are happy, whether you are anxious, whether you are confident. They can use your voice for the purposes of getting to know these. Also, apart from that, you note that monotone or use of one tone leads to boredom, and therefore it's recommended to use a different inflection. There is also another aspect of the speaker's voice that is very crucial, and that is the speed or the rate or the pace. And the rate or the pace is the speed of the speaker's voice. You find that the best rates depends on the mood the speaker is trying to create, the nature of the occasion, and the composition of the audience. And you find that a fast rate creates a feeling of happiness, fear, anger, surprise, where else a slow rate is better for expressing sadness or disgust. But you find that when you use a slow rate, people can get bored, and therefore it's good to moderate your voice in terms of the speed. Don't be too fast and don't be too slow. Now to the other element of voice that is very crucial is pause, and pausing refers to the momentary break in the vocal delivery of a speech. You put a momentary break, and you find that it can signal the end of a thought or give an idea time to sink, and even lend a dramatic impact to a statement. And therefore, pausing is very crucial. You want the points to sink in your listener's mind. And also, apart from that, you want to signal the end of one point and you're getting to another point, or even you want the congregation or the listeners to ask some few questions, or even you want to alert that you're coming to the end of your thought or even the end of your speech. And therefore, pausing is really crucial when it comes to speeches, presentation, or the art of public speaking. Also, there is something else that is very crucial, the pronunciation. And with the pronunciation, it's the accepted standards of sound and rhythm for words in a given language. There is a standard for pronouncing. There is a standard for the way you are supposed to pronounce your words. You can't go in a session, or you're making a presentation, and then you say a donkey and you're referring to a donkey. You say a nuclear and you're referring to a nuclear. Also, there are other aspects that you're supposed to consider as a public speaker, the articulation. And articulation is just joining of the elementary sounds of speech. And you find that some people, because of laziness or because of not being too keen, they'll say duty instead of beauty. We will now proceed to something else, and that is using body to communicate. And you find that how we use our body to communicate is very crucial, and it's an area that we cannot fail to mention when we are talking of public speaking, because you find even how we communicate with our bodies tend to pass some information. And you find that communicating with our bodies touches on the nonverbals. And number one is the posture. How we stand, how we sit, it really communicates, and therefore we should be very careful on how we stand, because it can relay some information. Also, the personal appearance, how you appear in front of your listeners or in front of your audience, matters a lot in terms of how you are dressed, in terms of your makeup, in terms of your hairstyle. It really matters. You find that it can even interfere with the effectiveness of delivery, or even make your audience not even listen to you, or even develop some attitude. I understand if you are to address all the people, or even people who have hit their 60s and 70s, and you wear the way we, the millennials, love or like to wear, they may not even end up listening to even the hairstyle. We have seen it happening. Ladies with dreaded hair, no one can listen to them in some places. Also, when ladies are on trousers, no one wants to listen to them. Also, the makeup, people will start staring at you other than focusing on the message. And therefore, the first impression in terms of the personal appearance matters a lot. Also, eye contact. You should always maintain eye contact with your listeners. You look at them, because you find the way the eye contact can also be judged and analyzed. And especially we from the African continent, we believe that if you're not looking at someone direct in the eye, there is a probability you are lying to them. Also, there is the proxemics, the distance you maintain between you and the audience. Don't be too close to your audience. They may feel uncomfortable to an extent that you're not able to focus on whatever you are delivering to them. There is also the movement. You can make movement, but ensure there is that limited movement. You don't want to move from one corner to the other, from front to back, making some few kilometrics as a way of delivery. People may get bored and they may stop focusing on the message, and they start now focusing on the movements that you are making. Also, there is the haptics, and the haptics is touches on touching. Avoid touching the listeners. Avoid touching them at all because it may raise some issue, and at the end of it all, it may be judged. Also, the gestures, expression of the inward. People will judge your facial expressions, how you are smiling, how you are laughing, you know, how you're frowning, how you are using your hands, and therefore it's always good to ensure that you don't overuse your gestures and you use them where necessary, and ensure that there is a relationship between the point you are relaying and the use of gesture. Now to our final topic that we'll be looking at today is listening. And you find that listening is very crucial and a very critical area when it comes to the art of public speaking. Definitely when you are making presentation, there is the recipient, and the recipient for the information or for your presentation to be considered effective, you find that listening skills must be applied, good listening skills. And how a speaker presents determine the listening process. How you make your presentation, it will determine the listening process of the listeners, because you may be too slow, your volume may be too low to an extent people cannot listen to whatever you are saying. And you find that basically, apart from the presenter's voice, or the presenter or the speaker determining whether people will listen, you find that generally there are people who are poor listeners, and therefore listening is a critical area that we cannot bypass. You find that listening is the capability to correctly obtain and interpret information in the communication process. Listening is key to effective communication. Without the ability to listen effectively, messages are easily misunderstood. Therefore, those who misunderstand the information during a session, it's as a result of listening, how you listen. There are 4 kinds of listening. And number 1 is the appreciative listening. And this is where the listeners or someone listens for the purposes of getting entertained or for the purposes of getting enjoyment. And a very good example, we all listen to music for the purposes of getting entertained. Others will go for sundowners because they want to get entertained. Others will go for machete for the purposes of getting entertained. You are listening for the purposes of getting enjoyment and entertained. Also, there is another type of listening or kind of listening. This is a critical listening, where you listen to evaluate the message for the purposes of making decision whether to accept the information or even to reject the information. And this happens when maybe some promoters or people who promote projects promote products during promotions, they bring in a product and then they give some information, and you try to analyze for the purposes of rejecting or even accepting. Maybe you have attended a conference that is geared toward educating people on a disease like cancer, and with such education, people are left with the option of deciding whether they'll go for screening or not going for screening. The information is offered to you as the listener, and once the information is offered to you as a listener, you are able to analyze and evaluate the information for the purposes of making decision whether to reject or not to reject, whether to comply or not to comply. And that is a critical listening. To our third type of listening, there is the empathetic listening. And this is listening to provide some emotional support to a friend in distress. You're just attending a session for the purposes of getting some information, and through this information, you just want to offer some help to a person or even a friend who is in distress. Also, there is the comprehensive listening. You are listening to understand a speaker. You really want to understand what the speaker means or what the speaker is relaying to the publics. Now to the process of listening, you find that listening is a process. It starts from one point to another point, and there are different stages of listening. And it starts with receiving, then understanding, then remembering, evaluating, and also responding. And we will look at each stage and try to understand each process of listening. Now to the process of listening, you find a scholar known as DeVito tried to divide the listening process into 5 stages. And stage number 1 is receiving. And with the receiving, it involves hearing and attending to the information, or to the information, to the messages that is being relayed. You're just hearing and attending to whatever is being relayed. And then there is the second stage, that is understanding. And this is the stage listener determines the context and the meaning of the words heard. And you find that the listener tends to learn the meaning of the communication. Therefore, with understanding, you're trying to contextualize the information that you have received. And from there, after contextualizing, now you are able to assign the meanings to the information. The other stage is remembering. And this is recalling, or the information that the listeners receive, they try to retain it in the mind. And once they have retained it in the mind, it can be either long-term remembering or even short-term remembering. And the other stage in the process of listening is evaluating, and with evaluation is where the listener tries to analyze the information, to assess the information. And once they assess the information, they are able to respond. And that brings us to the last stage of listening, that is responding. And responding, you find that the listeners can provide both verbal and non-verbal responses or the feedback. That's just the stages of listening. In the process of listening, it's a process for sure. You have to start, it has to start from listening and ends at responding. And the listening determines the response that you will give as a listener. Now to the causes of poor listening. There are different causes of the poor listening. And in this lecture, as we come to an end, we will look at the causes of listening, of poor listening, and also how you can improve your listening skills. And number 1 is not concentrating. You find that there are listeners who are poor in concentrating, and whenever presentation is made or whenever there is a session, they are on their phones, and even their mind is not set to listen to whatever is being presented. I know, for instance, you have attended sessions, and maybe the people you are seated next to, they start asking, amesema nini? Or later on, they give such comments like, mimi napanga venye nitafika ushago. And they were in the session, but they didn't get to know what the speaker was saying because they were not even concentrating. Maybe they were in their phone, or their mind was somewhere else. There is also listening too hard. And what I mean with listening too hard, you find that there are people who want to get each word that the speakers says. They want to get the place, they want to get the pronunciation, they want to get the statistics, they want to get the name. They are listening word by word, and therefore it becomes hard to listen. And also they can be considered to be poor listeners because of listening too hard. There is no way you can listen to word by word, name by name, start any number, each number. It becomes too hard because as we listen, we are supposed to pick the main points and not each word. Also, focusing on the delivery and personal appearance can be also another reason of poor listening. You find that there are listeners who tend to focus on how the speaker is delivering in terms of the movement and in terms of their personal appearance. You're staring at a speaker based on how they appear. And these can even make one not to listen well, because your focus is not on the message, it is on how the speaker is delivering and also the personal appearance. Also, there are distractors, and these distractors, as we had earlier mentioned, can be external distractors and internal distractors. With external, it is the physical distractors, like noise from construction, noise from transportation sector, or even loud music. And with the internal, these touches on the listeners internally, like the attitude. They may be having negative attitude, stress, emotions, hunger, fatigue, and therefore these can make them not listen well. Also, jumping into conclusion, you already know whatever the speaker wants to present. You're making hasty generalizations and also conclusion, even without a clear understanding of whatever is being relayed, and this can cause poor listening. Maybe the speaker wants to speak about a crisis, and you start looking at making conclusions, or even jumping into conclusion that the speaker will speak about the COVID-19, and maybe they are intending to talk about another crisis. Now, two ways in which a listener can improve his or her listening skills. And number one is avoiding distractors. You just focus to avoid the internal and external distractors, and also not to be diverted by the delivery modes and also the appearance of the speaker. You focus on the message. Also focus on the listening on main points other than listening too hard. And another way, you ask questions for clarification. If you don't understand anything, make sure that you ask questions for the purposes of getting clarity and for the purposes of proper understanding. And finally, develop note-taking skills. When you're making some notes, or when you are taking some notes during a presentation, it can make you understand, and also it can enhance your listening skills. And therefore, public speaking is an art, and it's a useful tool even in the society as far as moving the masses are concerned, and as far as making presentation is concerned. And at no point we can avoid, we, especially the media practitioners, we can avoid, or we can succeed without learning the art of public speaking. And therefore, that brings us to the end of our lesson today. Thank you for being part of this class. Thank you.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.